Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. The champagne glasses were still scattered across the living room when the last of the guests drifted out of Maxie Jones' apartment. Laughter lingered in the air, but beneath it was something heavier, something fragile and uncertain. Maxie stood alone near the doorway, her fingers trembling around the stem of her untouched drink. The banner that read "Welcome Home" drooped slightly over the mantel, its cheerful promise clashing with the storm inside her heart. Because the man standing across the room, the man who had just come back from the dead, looked exactly like Nathan West. And yet everything in Maxie's world felt upside down. Nathan moved toward her slowly, as if afraid she might vanish. His blue eyes were warm, familiar, achingly so. "Maxie," he said softly. Her breath caught that voice. She had heard it in her dreams, in her memories, in the echo of every lonely night since she'd buried him. But she had buried him. Port Charles had mourned him. She had collapsed over his casket and sworn she'd never love again. Now here he was. "I need to know," she whispered, tears forming. "Is this real?" Nathan's hand hovered near hers but didn't quite touch. "It's me, I promise." Behind them, Damien Spinelli stood frozen, watching the reunion like a man watching his world crack in two. Spinelli had stepped up when Maxie's life had fallen apart. He had helped raise her children. He had listened to her cry at night. He had dared to hope. And now hope was slipping through his fingers. "I never stopped loving you," Spinelli said quietly, stepping forward. Maxie flinched, not because she didn't care, but because she cared too much. "Spinelli." Nathan's jaw tightened. He recognized the look in Spinelli's eyes. It wasn't rivalry, it was heartbreak. "You moved on?" Nathan asked gently, though the question clearly wounded him. Maxie's voice cracked. "I thought you were dead." Silence swallowed the room. Spinelli's eyes softened. "Maxie deserves happiness, whether that is with the reanimated detective or the devoted tech genius is her choice." Maxie felt like she was splitting in two. One half belonged to her past, the love story cut short by tragedy. The other half belonged to the present, the man who had stood by her when the world collapsed. "I can't decide this tonight," she breathed. Nathan nodded, though the pain in his eyes betrayed him. "Take your time." Spinelli forced a brave smile. "The jackal shall respect whatever verdict the fair Maximister delivers." Verdict? That word hit Maxie like a hammer, because that's exactly what this was. A decision between the dead husband who had miraculously returned and the man who had rebuilt her life piece by piece. As Maxie sank onto the couch, clutching her head, she realized something terrifying. No matter what she chose, she would break someone's heart. Across town, another storm was brewing. Michael Corinthos stood in the Quartermain kitchen, staring at the chaos around him. The police had just left, but they would be back. Because they had questions. Serious ones. He replayed the moment in his mind, Nathan West asking for his keys. Michael hadn't thought twice. Why would he? Nathan was a detective, he had trusted him. But now Drew Kane was unconscious in his own home. And somehow, Michael's key had become evidence. "Tell me again why the cops think you broke into Drew's place," Brooklyn Quartermain asked, crossing her arms. "I didn't," Michael snapped. "I haven't even been there." But he knew how it looked. A spare key, a man incapacitated, tensions already high over Willow and custody battles. It was a setup. What Michael didn't know was that a small pair of eyes had witnessed something important. Wiley Corinthos sat upstairs, hugging his stuffed dinosaur, replaying what he had seen earlier. Uncle Chase bending down, Uncle Chase placing something on the kitchen floor. Keys. Michael's keys. Wiley had picked them up later and handed them to his dad. At the time, he hadn't thought it was strange. Now it felt wrong. "Mommy," Wiley whispered as Willow entered his room. Willow Kane forced a gentle smile. "Hey, sweetheart. I saw Uncle Chase put Daddy's keys on the floor." Willow's heart skipped, but she kept her face calm. "You did?" Wiley nodded seriously. Willow kissed his forehead. "Thank you for telling me." She walked out of the room slowly, her mind racing. If that was true, then someone was framing Michael. And yet, a dark thought crept into her mind. If Michael went to prison, full custody of the kids would be hers. No more courtroom battles. No more threats. No more interference. She swallowed hard, guilt flickering briefly before being smothered by desperation. Over at Drew's house, the man at the center of it all lay motionless in his bed. Willow had just administered another dose. Just until everything's settled, she whispered. Drew stirred faintly but didn't wake. She told herself she was protecting him, protecting their future. But if anyone saw... A knock sounded downstairs. Willow froze. Kai Taylor stood outside the front door. He had come to check on Drew. Something about this situation felt off. Willow smoothed her expression and opened the door. Kai, what are you doing here? I just wanted to make sure Drew's okay. He's resting. Kai leaned slightly, trying to look past her. Mind if I see him? Willow hesitated just long enough to raise suspicion. And Kai noticed. Meanwhile, at City Hall, Laura Collins sat across from Gent Sidwell, frustration simmering beneath her composed exterior. I'm recommending Alexis Davis to fill Drew's congressional seat, Laura said firmly. Sidwell steepled his fingers. That won't work for me. Laura's eyes narrowed. This isn't about what works for you. Oh, but it is, Sidwell replied coolly. You'll recommend Willow Kane instead. Laura stared at him. Absolutely not. Sidwell smiled faintly. You may not have a choice. Elsewhere, Ross Cullum watched the city with calculating eyes. He had been quiet lately. Too quiet. But not inactive. He knew about Britt Westbourne slipping out at night. He knew about her secret meetings with Jason Morgan. And secrets in Port Charles were weapons. If Cullum decided to expose them, Jason could find himself in serious danger. And then there was Jocelyn Jacks. Cullum had begun digging. He sensed something unusual about her. Too alert, too capable, too connected. It wouldn't be long before he uncovered the truth that Jocelyn was working with the WSB. And when that happened, Jack Brennan would have a war on his hands. Back at Maxie's apartment, the night stretched long and sleepless. She stared at an old photograph of her and Nathan on their wedding day. Beside it was a recent picture of her and Spinelli with the kids. Two futures. Two loves. One choice. By morning, she would have to deliver her verdict. And somewhere across town, Michael's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. They're coming for you. The knock on his door came seconds later. Police. With handcuffs. The flashing lights painted the Quartermain mansion in red and blue. Michael stood tall as officers approached, but his pulse thundered. Michael Corinthos, one officer said, you're under arrest for unlawful entry and suspicion of assault in connection with Drew Kane. Gasps echoed behind him. This is insane, Michael said, holding his hands out as cuffs clicked around his wrists. From the stairs, Wiley watched with wide, frightened eyes. Willow stood frozen in the hallway. For a brief, horrifying second, relief flickered across her face. Then guilt swallowed it whole. At the PCPD, Michael sat in an interrogation room, replaying every detail. Someone had orchestrated this. But who? Chase paced outside, sweat forming on his brow. Had Wiley told anyone what he'd seen? Had Willow figured it out? Chase had convinced himself he was protecting someone. Now he wasn't so sure. Back at Drew's house, Kai slipped upstairs while Willow stepped away to take a phone call. He pushed the bedroom door open slightly. Drew looked pale. Too pale. Kai noticed the IV bag. He frowned. Why would Drew need that at Holmes? Willow reappeared quickly. I told you he's fine. Kai met her eyes. Is he? Her smile faltered. Across town, Maxie finally made her decision. She called both men to meet her. Nathan arrived first, hope in his eyes. Spinelli came next, bracing himself. Maxie stood between them. I've thought about nothing else, she began. Nathan swallowed. Spinelli held his breath. I love you, she said to Nathan. I never stopped. Nathan's face lit up. But I also love you, she said, turning to Spinelli. Spinelli's heart cracked audibly in the silence. Maxie took a shaking breath. Nathan, you were my past, you're part of my soul, but Spinelli, he's been my present, my partner, my rock. Nathan's expression shifted from hope to understanding. I'm choosing Spinelli. The words shattered the room. Spinelli blinked in disbelief. The jackal is chosen. Maxie nodded through tears. Nathan stepped back, pain etched across his face, but dignity too. I just wanted you happy. She rushed to hug him, sobbing. He held her one last time, then let go. Outside, he stood alone on the sidewalk, staring at the rising sun. He had come back from the dead, and still lost the love of his life. Meanwhile, Ross Cullum made his move. An anonymous tip reached the PCPD about Britt Westbourne meeting Jason Morgan secretly. Jason received a warning from Sonny Corinthos. You're being watched. Jason's jaw tightened. Cullum was circling. And when Cullum circled, someone always bled. Elsewhere, Jocelyn received a coded message. Her cover was thinning. Jack Brennan stormed into her apartment moments later. You've been compromised. How bad? She asked. Bad. Back at City Hall, Laura confronted Sidwell again. You can't force my hand. Sidwell leaned back. Watch me. And at Drew's house, Kai made a decision. He returned later that night with a small camera. If Willow was hiding something, he would prove it. As the weeks spiraled into chaos, Port Charles teetered on the edge. Maxie had chosen her future. Michael sat in a jail cell. Willow's secret was seconds from exposure. Cullum sharpened his knives. And the question hanging over the city wasn't just who would fall next. It was how far everyone was willing to go to protect what they loved. Because in Port Charles, resurrection was possible. Redemption was optional. And survival was never guaranteed.